The Draft Management Plan Part B might have a mundane title, but it contains plenty of interesting plans for part of the Hunter coastline.
Yes, it's a very important plan for the community at large because it's talking about how council will manage that community recreation facility.
Its short-term suggestions include things like rehabilitation, walking trails and protecting Koori sites, while in the long term it looks at setting up major community and tourist facilities and artificial reefs. The possible relocation of surf clubs to protect them from severe erosion is another proposal.
A lot of money is spent by the community in constructing those buildings, and not only that, it's what is housed in those buildings, the emergency rescue equipment. So it's important we keep those facilities out of the way of coastal erosion.
Last night, a council committee voted to put the plan on public display for 2 months. It's hoped it'll attract plenty of community input.
And we want to get it right, so we are seeking comment from the public for those people who use that land.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News. Hundreds gathered in the old railway workshop for a solemn start to Australia Day. 49 people, mainly from Eastern Europe, became Australians. Canadian immigrant Elena Garnes summing up their reasons for taking citizenship.
I think my ties are closer here to Australia now, and this is my future.
The group was also addressed by Judy Nunn and Bruce Venables, the actors and writers using their roles as Australia Day ambassadors to urge cultural understanding.
Multiculture is the standard. That means you must be even-handed. Say g'day and give a bloke an even go.
It was also a time for typically Australian pursuits, from a touch football competition to a surf carnival on Nobby's Beach. The guns of Fort Scratchley were blazing again in a salute to our National Day. Also making a noise, the Millennium Concert, performers offering a sneak preview of an anthem for Newcastle, which will make its debut later tonight.
May you have lots of luck and many wins in your racing career. Thank you.
Australia Day for some of the world's most promising young golfers.
We've got a team from USA, includes a course record holder, Kent Richardson, 2 guys from Scotland who have been very impressive in practice, 2 guys from Wales, a Japanese team. So yeah, it's very good. It's very good for the Australian guys to test themselves against these international players.
Among the top-class field, Australian Amateur Open runner-up, 23-year-old Scott Gardner, giving the Belmont layout the thumbs up.
I think it gets better each year. Like the greens here today are very good, and they're going to get quicker as the week goes on, so it should be good.
Scott would have been given more attention earlier had it not been for the remarkable success of one of last year's field, Aaron Baddeley.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great talent in Australia, as you've seen over the summer, with 3 of our amateurs winning, and somebody else will pop their head up this week, I'm sure.
Among the internationals, 22-year-old British amateur Luke Donald, who in today's international teams event began to make his mark.
We were in the off-season actually back home, so I haven't been playing that much, but over the last few days we can get to look at the course and getting back in the swing of things.
You can't complain about a series of birdies you've had today though, can you?
No, I've been playing really well. One little missed putt there unfortunately, but it's been going really well.
Luke among the 198 players who'll hit the course tomorrow for the opening round of the Lake Macquarie International. Matt Carden, NBN News.
The Breakers' dreams of adding to their unbeaten record were dashed early at Hindmarsh Stadium, a deft pass opening a gaping hole in Newcastle's defence, Matthew Kemp on hand to capitalise. Breakers keeper Bob Catlin received another workout soon after. Fortunately, the woodwork came to the rescue, but there was no such luck in the 33rd minute, Claudio Pelosi only finding the back of the net. 2-0. Catlin and Todd McManus were forced to put their heads together to stop another assault. Some frantic work by the defender saving the day. The Breakers mounted their own challenges in the second half, but were only foiled by Adelaide keeper Wilson Nizovic. The Force, meanwhile, beat Bob Catlin for a third time, but despite Pelosi's prayers, the goal was disallowed due to an earlier handball. Newcastle fought hard but wasn't rewarded. Lee Sterry describing the loss as a good tonic to wake the team up before Sunday's clash with South Melbourne.
In the 1850s, Morpeth was a busier river trading town than Newcastle. The pace of life is a little slower today, but reminders of its heyday are many. Hidden in this unassuming brick shed off the main street is the oven used by a young David Arnott to begin his family's successful business.
Between 1862 and 1864, he baked biscuits in here for the ships. He had a door at the other side of the bakehouse there, with access to the river, so he could load the ships, and of course he had the shop here, and he was selling to the public.
While the Arnott's company is no longer Australian-owned, this piece of its history will remain local. Businessman John Rademacher planning to restore his new purchase and open it to the public.
A little building like this just provides the atmosphere for people to sit around, enjoy the view, enjoy the atmosphere, and maybe have a little dive into our wonderful past.
Meantime, the nearby Maitland Mall will be transformed into a formal setting on Saturday night when 630 people take part in the Ball in the Mall, proceeds going towards charity.
Last year was youth in Maitland, like Youth Off the Streets, Youth Enterprise, and this year it's going to the Maitland Hospital.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It was anything but your average sing-along, with MARTA staff today sending out a clear message. They will no longer tolerate politicians pussyfooting around the issue of healthcare in the Hunter, nor will they be bullied into accepting privatisation plans.
The MARTA is public! The MARTA is public! The MARTA is public!
Surgeons, nurses, patients, administration and kitchen staff held court on the front lawn of the hospital, uniting to highlight the plight of the Mater, which they claim is desperately underfunded.
Having to deal with conditions that are close to inhumane. We're dealing with conditions now that really breach standards of human dignity, that afford an adequate degree of privacy to patients. They constitute a risk to patients and to staff because of cross-infection.
The protest ironically coincides with news St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney has been given a state government grant of $163 million. Dr Henry says he is astounded at the apparent political indifference to the hospital, especially considering it's the leading facility servicing cancer and leukemia patients across northern New South Wales.
The conditions are just now unacceptable. The medical staff, the nursing staff, the general staff of the hospital have all agreed that it's reached a point that we just can't work under these conditions any longer.
The state government has frozen plans to privatise the Mater Hospital, but has stopped a long way short of assuring public funding. The Mater Hospital Board is yet to announce its stance on the issue of privatisation. A public meeting will be held next Wednesday for the community to have its say. Amanda Bolger, NBN News. Watching television is a favourite Aussie pastime, but for young children it can come at a price. An American study found sitting in front of the TV can limit brain development in babies and toddlers because it only allows for one-way interaction.
Television is sending out images to the children, but whatever these young children do, the television doesn't respond to. What children really need for their optimum development is the opportunity to interact with their parents or caregivers.
A leading Newcastle paediatrician is urging parents to carefully control their children's intake of television and increase activities such as reading to them and playing with toys. Spending too much time on the computer or watching TV is also being partly blamed for child obesity. Professor Vimpani says children need to be encouraged to spend more time outside exercising.
Backyard cricket's excellent, yeah, and just riding bikes around, anything that other than just sitting on your butt all day after you come home from school.
The Mater Hospital Board broke its silence today, adamant the health facility had to be brought up to standard. Chairman Brian McGuigan was equally clear there'd be no privatisation.
This is a non-for-profit operator. The sisters have been a non-for-profit operator all this time, and anybody who's been a patient here at the Mater knows that the staff here are dedicated to that service, and that's exactly what we're going to do in the future.
The hospital's General Manager, Colin Osborne, charged with coordinating a consultative process involving all clinicians and staff to draw up an expressions of interest statement by March 8.
There are indications that there are groups out there that would be interested, but clearly it's improper for us at this point in time, given issues of probity, to actually move into any discussions with any potential partner.
A process welcomed by the Nurses Association.
Well, I think it's a good thing that the board has accelerated the process of coming up with the expression of interest, that they're pursuing a not-for-profit, and I'm sure our members would welcome that.
Ultimately, it's now an issue over bricks and mortar, $80 million worth. So staff must decide on whether to continue protesting over a lack of interest from the public sector or explore the option of a private injection of funds. No doubt it'll be at the top of the agenda at next Wednesday's public meeting. Matt Carden, NBN News.
dead and gone. That's the feeling of hundreds of sacked workers who left the Rutherford picket almost vacant this morning. They joined other creditors in Newcastle to see what they could salvage from the wreck of National Textiles. The big issue, according to Arch Bevis, the opposition spokesperson on industrial relations, is the question of directors' responsibility to protect workers' redundancy entitlements.
I don't think it's good enough just to accept that directors can walk away scot-free.
When the creditors' meeting ended, Stan Howard, the PM's brother and the chairman of the National Textiles Board, finally gave his feelings on the issue.
If you adopt a situation where directors are personally liable for companies' debts, you would have no directors. It's as simple as that.
Workers are to receive leave and holiday entitlements within 6 months, but they'll only get 50 cents in the dollar for redundancy, and that will be paid over 2 years, not one as expected. Meanwhile, the state and federal governments can't agree on assistance they might offer. Peter Reith proposing a guaranteed $20,000 package, the state saying payments should be in addition to redundancy entitlements paid by the administrator. Federal Labor has another idea.
The Labor Party has proposed to Peter Reith a national insurance scheme operated through the superannuation funds that are already in existence.
David McElwain, NBN News.
Buzz may look fit and healthy now, but just over a week ago he was given a slim chance of survival after he ate some poisoned bait.
He was very sick and we had to take him down to the vets and they gave him a few injections and he almost died.
Chris has found several poisoned baits in his yard recently, thrown over the fence by an unknown assailant. And Buzz is not the first dog to have been poisoned.
He had a dog about 3 years ago that had been baited twice and on the second time he actually died.
There have been 3 homes in the same area that have had baits thrown into their yards, leading to a slow and painful death for the pets that eat them.
It's causing them probably a lot of abdominal pain. They do have severe diarrhoea eventually when the therapy starts working.
In previous cases, the poison in the baits had been identified as arsenic. It's unclear if the latest series of poisonings are related. And if the people responsible are caught, they face a maximum fine of $11,000 or 2 years imprisonment, possibly even both. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Afternoon winds can make Belmont a challenge for even the best amateurs in the country, but the links course was in near perfect condition for those hitting off in the second group today. Dennis Morgan agreed an early birdie helped him to a 1 under par round 71, but he's well off the pace. American Ken Bridgetson too made the most of the ideal conditions to race to 5 under after just 6 holes. He eventually carded a 69, but that only gets him to even for the tournament. An unusual round for Brad McIntosh, who hit 4 bogeys and 2 eagles on the front 9 to end up hitting the clubhouse at 3 over for the tournament. One of the real movers on the leaderboard though, Scott Gardner. The Gold Coast golfer shot a 3 under 69 to move 5 under overall, 2 shots off the pace. One of those out in front, holding off a host of challenges, overnight leader Scott Strange. With pinpoint approach shots, he found himself in familiar birdie territory. The field of 190 is cut to 90 for the final 2 rounds this weekend.
still owed $7 million in redundancy entitlements, union representatives spelt out the hard facts after yesterday's creditors' meeting.
You may get 50 cents in the dollar, depending on all the factors of flogging the place off and all that kind of stuff. Not in 12 months, like they said last week, but in 24 months.
Union organisers told workers they risk losing the administrator's deal if further industrial action disrupts the sale of National Textiles assets, but they weren't daunted.
Let's not give in to any sort of bullshit bargains. Let's give it to them and go for 100% and don't stop until we get it.
The administrator's offer was rejected and the union has demanded company directors live up to what workers say are legal and moral obligations to pay redundancy entitlements.
Maybe they could do with a visit from the people from this side. Yep. And maybe we could picket their houses and put some pressure on them that way.
And with Peter Reith's plan to make directors responsible for money owed to workers still in its infancy, he's unlikely to get support from the PM's brother, who is also chairman of the National Textiles Board.
Should directors be personally liable for
this? No, they shouldn't be.
The fire took hold and there wasn't much left of the Beresfield home.
Three of the bedrooms have been burnt out, and we found later on that a little girl, had been playing with a cigarette lighter.
Later in the evening, 2 people were treated for smoke inhalation after a child started a fire in these Merriweather flats. Inspector Wayne Hyland says smoke detectors could prevent the grief involved with fires that threaten the lives of children, like the one at Beresfield yesterday.
The trauma will stay with not only the child that caused this fire, but also the whole household. And that's the tragedy of the situation. I believe that this child will remember this for the rest of her life.
Tamworth may now lay claim to the boot scooting in the street record, but Maitland proved last night that what it lacks in numbers, it more than makes up for in style. The city centre transformed into a giant open-air ballroom, the annual Lions Club Ball on the Mall, taking over not only the heart of the CBD, but the hearts of locals as well. While this sort of toe-tapping is supposed to be cheek to cheek, some just grooved as singles. In fact, some gave up on the traditional and simply grabbed any partner to jive with. A different pace earlier in the night at Newcastle Baths. The action not so much in the pool, but beside it, as the public settled in for some pre-sunset entertainment. Singer Brooke Harvey providing a little dinner music. Then once the sun went down, the lights went up on the movies. Fittingly for the setting, the film was the classic The Big Blue. Matt Carden, NBN News.
The new tier of lower-level Commonwealth Court was announced in Canberra today, with Diana Bryant given the role as the first Chief Federal Magistrate of the service. The yet-to-be-appointed Hunter-based magistrate will travel around the region, dealing with family law and civil matters which currently have to go through the family court, such as applications for divorce, child custody and family law property disputes.
Magistrates going on circuit to rural and regional areas will give people in the bush better access to courts than they've ever got before.
The move is expected to ease the backlog of family court cases, allowing judges to handle the complicated cases. It's also set to reduce the cost and waiting time of people with simple disputes.
Much of the service's focus is likely to be on family law, assisting families in distress to solve less complex disputes quickly and with minimal technicality.
Meanwhile, it may be a new century, but when it comes to the opening of Newcastle's official Supreme Court sittings, the legal fraternity sticks to traditional pomp and ceremony. Justice Ireland presided over today's service, which marks the beginning of 4 weeks of Supreme Court sittings in Newcastle. He gave local legal representatives a pat on the back, saying their professionalism is second to none.
Newcastle's always prided itself, our local profession, on getting on well with the judges that come here. We seem to have a very friendly arrangement between them.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Almost 300 displaced workers from the Rutherford plant spent today at a seminar organised by Maitland Council, learning more about their re-employment and retraining options.
A lot to absorb. It's a little bit too much, but it's good that all the support's here for us.
Yeah, I've been looking in the paper and I've actually, applied because it's a big market out there for a lot of people that are out of work at the moment.
People have had access to job loss counsellors. There's been a lot of financial information made available, and I've heard of a couple of people actually being employed already today.
One of them was Andrew Manners from Curry. Meantime, the workers here at the picket line outside the plant are standing firm. They last week rejected a part payment offer from the company, instead vowing to fight on for as long as it takes for their full entitlements. Some of the workers are owed as much as $50,000 by the company, but are having to borrow school clothes for their children. A contingent of the sacked workers is planning to travel to Kempsey on Thursday to confront the Prime Minister personally as Mr Howard tours regional Australia discussing economic issues. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Maritime Union set up camp across the road from the Mater Hospital today on the site where a multi-million-dollar redevelopment was supposed to have taken place. It's a sore point for the staff who say the run-down facility has been subject to severe cutbacks and more recently the threat of privatisation.
A lot of the people with the illnesses that we treat and the sorts of treatment that they require, it's not profitable. And so we just have concerns that our population here in the Hunter would suffer because of that.
The issue will be raised at a meeting at the Workers' Club tomorrow night. Staff expected to call then for community support. As for money already raised through private charity events and telethons, calls for that money to go straight into the construction of the Mater Institute of Breast Cancer and Melanoma Services.
If the people of Newcastle are going to see to it that they get what they deserve in terms of health care and the resources of this state, they're going to have to jump up and demand it.
The empty beds and deserted corridors say it all. This unit has been sitting idle since Christmas, sparking fears of a ward closure. Patients from the 14-bed rheumatology unit have been moved to another area of the hospital. Hunter Health calling it a consolidation of resources.
It has been a total consolidation. Currently, we are reviewing the situation every day, and when the demand is there, we will be opening.
The unit was due to reopen on 2 separate occasions, but both times the move was deferred. Now the New South Wales Nurses Association fears the specialist care of patients with joint problems may be jeopardised.
It could mean that staff with specialist skills are not available at all times.
Hunter Health, however, maintains that patients are still receiving expert care, which extends from the hospital to outpatient clinics and private homes. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.